everyone. Well, it's the middle of January in Indiana. About a -20 wind chill outside. It's really getting kind of depressing. I've got so much of the car tore apart for my projects, but it's actually been too cold to really do too much out here. But on a long weekend, I decided I'm going to try to warm things up enough and open this car back up a little bit and start working on the T-top trim again. And oh, by the way, anybody guess what that is? All right, so take a look at that. Been doing a lot of work on the trim, and I don't know how well the camera and lighting will pick it up, but I'm really happy with the finish I'm starting to get. And I'll be honest, I had to start and then sand off and start over a couple of times on one or two of these pieces, just because there would be one little spot that I would screw up on or didn't have sanded right, or get a little spot in the paint when I was spraying it. And I don't know, something about the trim on these cars, I just can't stand to have bad spots on it. So I'm going to go over what I've done and what I used for all this. Getting all the heaters off is just probably going to be impossible. When I turn the propane heater off, then my electric heater up there in the corner keeps turning on, and it's probably louder than the propane. So, and then when I get both of them shut off, the furnace to the house turns on, and so there's always going to be some humming, I guess. Apologize for that, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So like I was saying, I'm starting to get most all of my trim finished. I've already refinished and reinstalled on the passenger side this A-pillar trim here. I haven't done the driver's side yet, so that'll be coming up next. And then I've also repainted on the B-pillar this C-channel trim, and I've got it reinstalled. It came out really good, and there was a few chips in that before in the finish, so everything's getting real dusty though, and that's looking good. So back to the trim. It was in pretty rough shape. There've been several coats of paint on it. So I've sanded everything down, sanded it by hand. I got this Duragold multi-pack. It's got a bunch of different grits in it, and basically if there was a couple of areas with high buildup of paint or chips in it, I used the 150 and 220 just over a couple spots to help quickly get it down. Then I moved up to the 400, and then finally I did 600 on everything. Now, before I could really get to all the sanding, remember that on the sides of this, all that adhesive from the felt strips was on here. So getting all the adhesive off was one of the hardest parts. And ultimately, you know, I tried an adhesive remover wheel, and that did not work well at all. I used a wire bristle brush. That worked okay in some spots where it was really thick and built up, but it did more work for you later in the paint to get it smoothed out than probably what it was worth. Ultimately, I think this wheel did the best for me. And I got a couple of these, I think at Menards or somewhere. You can probably get them at Harbor Freight also, but these wheels did the best job of removing what I needed to remove, but not doing too much more damage than what I wanted. And then that, in combination with the Goo Gone and rubbing that in with a hand brush, a toothbrush type of thing, ultimately that got all the adhesive off. But it did make it where you sanded down to the bare metal in several areas on these aluminum trim pieces. So once everything was sanded to my liking and smooth, and you couldn't feel any imperfections anymore, I went and used the SEM, the self-etching primer, in all the areas where I got down to bare metal. Now I know some people probably say that if it's just really small areas on this trim that is not needed, and I really don't know. I just know that I don't want to have to take all this off again and do it later because stuff starts coming off. So I try to do it the best I could from the beginning. So anywhere on these trim pieces where it was sanded down to the substrate, I hit it with the self-etching primer. And then I did the whole thing with the high build primer, SCM as well. And I did a couple, 2 or 3 coats of that. And I just kept looking in the light to see if I could see any imperfections. And that's, like I said earlier, a few places at that point I had to start sanding down again. But I never really sanded all the way through to the metal after the high build primer. But I would sand it down, get it feathered out across the trim, and then hit it again until everything looked as good as it could. And then I finally went back with a can of SCM trim black. We all love the trim black, use it all the time. I actually bought a fresh can even though I had some left to make sure that all of these trim pieces that are be butted up next to each other came out of the same can, just in case there was some slight difference. And then this is one of the middle pieces that connects the two together. All I have left on this is one of these. Right now this just has the etch primer on it. I haven't hit that one yet with the high build or the actual paint, and that's my last piece to do. I just lost track of time when I was doing everything else. I didn't get that one done. It'll just be waiting. Like I said, I've got the driver's side yet to take off some pieces that'll need sanded and primer and painted also. So I'm not quite done, but I just wanted to show you guys the different things I used to get everything cleaned up and the process of how I went and painted all of it. I'm getting close to where I'll start putting all the felt strips on these. So I kept the originals. You can see here I've got them labeled, you know, driver front, driver rear, and then here's passenger front, passenger rear. That's going to help me get the angles and the cutouts all done in the right spot. I just got to lay these out flat over the new pieces and get them trimmed up to about the right size. And then lastly, if you watched any of my earlier videos before all these projects started, you probably heard me in one of them talk about why I was going to start removing all this stuff. And I showed some examples of where, even though the felt was new and I had put it on a couple years ago with all new weather stripping, the felt was already pulling away from those trim pieces. And I bought, I'll be right back. I bought some of this automotive adhesion promoter, and I'm going to use this on my trim before I stick on the new felt that's adhesive backed, and try to give me the best chance possible of that sticking completely on these new painted surfaces and not coming off once everything's installed. So that was very annoying the time I took a couple years ago to put this weather stripping and felt beads all replacing that, and have it just start to peel away within the first 6 months or so. So that's kind of an update on the trim, and let's go look at this headliner. So I've opened this up, and you're looking at the inside of it, not the part that'll be seen in the car, but the part that goes up against the T-top. Now the great thing about buying the aftermarket from TMI is this is a rigid plastic. And so down in these thin spots, you know, when you remove it from the car, this wants to bend or it wants to tear because it's just a thin layer of cardboard, really. This isn't going to have any of those creases. Over there, hanging up, you can see that's the what came out of the car. That's the paper-backed version after I removed all the old vinyl from it. It didn't tear yet, but it does have a bit of a crease where it's bent coming out of the car, there by where the map light goes. So hopefully I'm holding on to it till I make sure this new one works well and fits. But if somebody's out there got a T-top and needs a factory headliner core, I might have one available here soon once I make sure this one fits, because I won't have a need for the factory one anymore. I'm not real thrilled about just how much material they left all the way around. I understand why they leave it up to me to cut this out, but I don't know why we have to have all this stuff around the other edges. That's just more trimming for me that I have to deal with. But I'll flip this around and we'll see the inside of it. All right, guys and gals, look at that. So this is gonna look awesome. It is the textured vinyl version. It's not cloth. So that's gonna be an exact match on my seats. With that texture there. And then if I look at the door panels, which obviously I've got it all tore apart, but on the doors it's also going to match, because these are all TMI door panels, TMI upholstery that I redid the seats a couple years ago, and now I'll have the same material on the headliner. So more to come on the install of this later, and more to come on getting the actual weather stripping. The driver's side here, I'm about done with cleaning everything out. The passenger side's where I started, it's all done. The driver's side, I'm getting caught up, and got to take this off, get it painted, got to take this off, get it cleaned up. These are the worst to clean because of how much adhesive and weather stripping sealant is inside here. So those take forever to get clean and then painted. But yeah, we're coming along, and I'm doing some inspection and cleaning on my new weather stripping that I got. And as if you've done this before, or you've seen some videos on this T-top weather stripping, you'll know that a lot of times, even when you put the brand new stuff on, it does not seal up very well at all around the windows. You know, back here and up here, you can have a lot of gaps between the glass and the weather stripping. Now, we'll eventually get to where this is all installed and I go through all the adjustments on the windows to try to get all that dialed in. But one thing you got to do, or most of the time anyway, is use some of this 1/2-inch foam beading, and you fish it in through some of these spots to help fill in the gaps. Like right here, you fish it all the way down, and then on the other end, same deal. This is towards the front. This is the piece that goes up along here, and on the back side of it, there are spots where you can fish that all the way up through to the top. Well, before I do any of that, I've been looking this over, and look at just how much this kind of gray, if you can see that, or chalky materials all over this brand new weather stripping. You know, that's mold release that gets sprayed in when they mold this stuff so that it will come out of the mold easier. And even though they are using mold release, you can see there's a lot of damage. These are brand new out of the wrapper, and they're just not going to look the greatest. I have yet to find any that really come close to OEM. But you know, these are from Daniel Carpenter, so it's probably the best I'm going to get, because I think most of their stuff is supposed to be using original tooling, but you know, it's just not the best looking finish. Anyway, if you notice how this looks nice and clean, whereas this is really chalky, I've been spending a lot of time with these scrubbing hand wipes, and I've been trying to get all of that mold release off. I've been scrubbing and scrubbing, and then wiping down until it doesn't look chalky and gray or white anymore. And don't do that on just the spots you'll see, do it on all the spots where you're on the back side where you're going to be putting weather stripping adhesive between this and the car. That's really where you want to get everything scrubbed and clean. I'm using these guys, hand wipes from Menards, I think, shop wipes. Get all that cleaned up before I go to apply any of the weather stripping adhesive. So more to come on that, but just wanted to let everybody know that how important it is to get this stuff clean. The last thing we want is to go through all this work and then this stuff not stay stuck down. So anyway, I'll get back at it. All right guys, I've got everything cleaned up. All the mold release is off on both corners here, looking a lot better. And next thing, I'm just following some of the instructions that came with it. I've taken a piece of wire and ran it all the way through. This is just, electrical wire. I fed it in from this end, which would be down here on the door. I fed the wire through all the way up to the top corner. This corner is what will be right here. And I sprayed inside this hole, pointing in there, and then at this end I sprayed in that way some white lithium grease, just a couple little squirts that kind of get distributed in here. And then I put a little bit on my glove and coated the wire. I didn't coat this end, that's the end that I'm just going to pull back, but I coated this half before I inserted it in from the front up towards the top. Then I taped with some electrical tape the wire around the foam tubing. Now I'm going to feed it through that slit and start slowly pulling it down till I get it all the way, till I get the end of this all the way up to this corner, and then I'll be back. If you have any kind of bends or twists in it, it's just going to be more friction and make it harder to pull this stripping through. So make sure you keep it in a straight line, either on a table or up in the air, and just pull slowly and steady. And also make sure you get a little bit of that lubricant on the foam itself before you start pulling it through. And here you can see I've just got a little bit left up at the top end because it's going to tuck up inside and go all the way up here. So don't pull it too far in. And then at the other end here, you can see I've got some of that lithium grease. As you pull it through, it kind of squeegees out what was inside there and comes out at this end. So I'll wipe all that off. If you let it dry, it gets pretty junky. So try to wipe it off as much as you can before it dries. It won't hurt anything or break down the rubber, but it just makes a powdery mess later on. Now, full transparency, the first time I tried this, I didn't have quite enough grease in there, and it started to get really hard to pull, and I kept pulling when I shouldn't have, and pulled the wire right off the end. So I had to start all over, and the second time I just made sure I had enough in my hand with the rubber glove, and I coated the rubber all the way to the end here, so it never kind of got to a dry spot, and went right through that time, no problem. So I'll get the wire off, get it cleaned up, and then we'll get this tucked inside here. All right, so I've taken a shop rag, I wiped off most of that lithium grease, and then I started pulling the tape off. Thought I would just show you in case you haven't done this before. Initially, just lay your wire next to your foam and tape it up real good, and then leave you some extra wire, and then fold it over what you've taped, and then tape around it again. And that'll make sure it really helps you from pulling it right through, pulling it off the foam. So tape it up, fold it over, tape it up again, and that works really well. Okay, so I've got that piece about 2 inches tucked up in there, and it goes all the way up to this edge here. So it goes all the way through, and then now at this end, obviously you'll have to trim some of that off, but I'm not going to cut any of it off yet because I'm not exactly sure how I want to attach this to the front of the door, and more to come on that. I've got an idea that might help keep all this together on these 87, 88 versions that are a little different. Well, that's what I got for now. I know it's really slow and just a little bit at a time, but with as cold as it's got and with everything going on with the holidays, just every now and then you got to slow down. I'll get back at it once we get a little bit of a warmer weather. Amazing the difference out here once it just gets in the 20s outside. It makes working in here a lot easier. So car's covered back up until next time. Later.